Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Spirit of Liberty. Appreciate you joining me this afternoon. Today, we are going to talk about a subject that I know pretty much every red-blooded man is interested in, and that is sports. Sports is a big thing. Of course, this week, we've got the Super Bowl coming. A lot of people are going to be talking sports, and a lot of churches will probably be canceling services for Sunday night because it's Super Bowl Sunday, and sports is a major part of our culture in America today. And I don't believe it's all bad. I do believe, I think sports are good. I think there's a lot of benefits to sports. We're going to talk about kind of the pros and cons of sports because there's positive and there is also negative. And what I want to do today, as we talk about this, just kind of help us understand who we are as men, not just who we are as men, but who we are as just kind of Americans. I'm hoping to maybe illustrate some things that will help us when it comes to developing our own character, because I believe sports is something that, one, it reveals your character. I really think it does. And some people think very negatively about sports because they often see the worst in people when sports are going on. And that is true because sports is something that typically it can bring out the worst in us. But sports is also something that can be used to help develop character. And I think that's another reason, too. It's good to, with your boys especially, to let them get involved in some kind of sport. Whatever it is, and we'll talk about a lot of different sports, but that's a good way for you to kind of see their character and find out what you need to do to develop their character to help them be better. And we are not producing good, strong men. We are not producing men with any kind of self-control and character, and these are things that we must do. And I do believe that sports can contribute to that. But at the same time, yes, sports is something that we can kind of make into a god. And if you do that kind of thing, if you get your priorities wrong with this, then yes, it can be a problem. But I'm not going to go as far as just to say sports are bad. Christians shouldn't have anything to do with sports. Christians shouldn't watch any sports. I think that would be crossing a line to go that far. I'm not mad at you if you want to watch a Super Bowl after you get home from church. But at the same time, too, don't watch the halftime show. I already did it again. I already called out or told everyone how outraged I am by the perversion of the halftime show. And I don't even know what it's going to be about, and it hasn't happened yet, but I guarantee it's going to be perverted. Guarantee people are going to be shocked and outraged. And if you're shocked and outraged by what happens at the halftime show, I can understand the outrage. What I can't understand is the shock. There is nothing that should shock us anymore. And we'll get into some of the problems that I have with it, but let's not go as far as just throwing it all out. But one thing I do want to do before I get into some scriptures on this subject, I would like to talk for a little bit because I think this is kind of interesting about sports and culture. Because what's interesting in the Bible, you don't really see any references to sports until you get to the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul, in his writings, he uses a lot of sport-type metaphors. We're going to look at some of those. Unless I'm missing something, I can't really think of anybody else that use them. I'm thinking off the top of my head here. Hebrews uses one that we're going to look at, but a lot of people think the Apostle Paul wrote Hebrews. And what's interesting about that is Paul was also a Roman. And so while Paul was Jewish, he was also Roman. And we know that sports, it was a very Gentile thing. It was a very Greek thing. We understand that the Olympics, I think those started in like 6th or 7th century BC when they started, having things like the Olympics. I'm going to read some stuff on that too. But it was a really big part of the Greek culture, and obviously that was very the Roman culture was very influenced by that. Paul being a Roman, sports seemed like it was something he was interested in. He's constantly making those kind of references where you're like your Jewish writers, you don't really see him doing that. And isn't it interesting today? And I hope nobody takes this as being racist. I don't believe this is racist at all. But sports is not that big of a thing, and athleticism amongst the Jewish community. Okay, I challenge you to. I did this one time just to prove how racist the NBA was, and I looked up Jewish basketball players. I think there was only a couple, but a whole bunch of Jewish owners, interestingly enough. But when I was over in Israel, I was kind of astounded, and maybe I shouldn't even say this, but it's like when you're in like your Palestinian areas, you have a lot of guys there that are, that are built, strong guys, look like guys you wouldn't want to mess with. When you get into like your Orthodox Jewish culture, not one. I mean, just not one guy that looked physically intimidating, muscular, anything like that. I mean, not one. I'm sure they exist out there somewhere. All right? I'm not trying to be, but in that culture, sports has never really been as big of a thing. But it has always been with the Gentiles, with the Greeks, and just kind of an interesting thing too. This is in Maccabees, okay, and I always have to disclose this. I do not believe Maccabees belongs in the Bible. And I've done messages about why I do not believe it is scripture. I do believe it is good history. I do not believe it is scripture. But an interesting thing, it says in 1 Maccabees 1:14, talking about the Greeks, and it says, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen. And they did. The Greeks, they were the ones that were kind of obsessed with body image. They were the ones that kind of, had all the naked statues, but, typically, they had the muscle. They were the ones that got the Olympics and things like that going. And so without a doubt, that Greek Gentile culture, we definitely have a lot of that in our country today. I mean, we've got gyms everywhere today, not even just because people are obsessed with body image and all that, but partly because, we're all so overweight and everybody's trying to lose that. But at the same time, now you look and say, well, is that saying it's a sin? No, but that was the custom of the heathen, that they had things like that. That's something they typically have been more interested in, obsessed with. And that was probably the first time anything like that was put in Jerusalem, where they didn't have anything like that, before. We don't really see any evidence of them having sports and stuff in Jerusalem amongst the Jews. But with the Greeks, without a doubt, they did. And sports have been something that, men have always been interested in for a lot of reasons. Now, I want to, before we go to some history too, on ancient sports, because when you look at ancient sports too, it just kind of helps us understand why guys are especially interested in sports. And I get it. Women are interested in sports too, but that's because women are being trained to be men today. And I don't think it's wrong for women to have some sports and, enjoy some of that stuff. Just don't try competing with men, and men, don't try competing with women. If women want to do some things, because part of sports is fun. We'll talk about that, and women are allowed to have fun as long as they can still be ladies and not turn into men. But but it is something that is always been more something men were into, and it probably always will be. And there's a reason for that. And in 2 Timothy 2:5, Paul speaking says, and if a man also strive for masteries, yet is he not crowned, except he strive lawfully. And that term masteries is interesting, and I think that's a great term for sports. I mean, I almost think we should still be calling sports masteries, because sports too, a part of what that is, it's like it's fun. Some of us play sports because it's fun. There are sports that you can play by yourself, sports you can play in a group, with just a couple people, and it's fun. And so when I think of sports too, I think of fun. But at the same time too, if I play a sport, I want to be good at it. If I play against somebody, I want to win. You know why? Because I want to be good at it. I want to be the best at it. I want to be the master in that area. And so I like that term masteries, because if you look at that, The definition, or the Greek word, is athleo, and it means to contend in the competitive games or strive. So, if you are going to contend, if you are going to compete, you want to win. You want to prevail over everyone else. That's part of what you do. And, typically, even young boys from the time they're little kids, what are they always trying to do? Dominate each other. You see a hill, you go to the top of it, you start pushing everybody off, and you declare yourself king of the mountain. And then everybody tries to dethrone you. That's kind of how we've always been. You don't typically see girls playing king of the mountain. That's just not something they're as interested in. But guys, we are competitive by nature. And then in 1 Corinthians 9:24, it says, "Know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? So run that ye may obtain." This was back before everybody got a trophy. "And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible." So if you want to strive for the mastery, if you want to be the master, if you want to win, if you want to prevail over everybody, you're going to have to be temperate in all things, because there's going to be some competition out there. And that's probably another reason they don't call sports mastery, because of the fact too, everybody gets a trophy today. Everybody's a winner. But no, not everyone can be the master. Not everyone can strive for the mastery. Only one gets that. And so, he's telling them, run that you may obtain. He's using these kind of metaphors too, especially when talking to Greek people who are probably interested in sports. And so I think Paul probably picked a lot of that up from him being a Roman more than he did with him being a Jew, because we just don't see that as much with in the Jewish cultures. And I can't think of any references in the Old Testament, when it comes to sports. It does seem like it was more of a New Testament thing, and specifically the Apostle Paul. And so, again, because these things came from the Greeks, does that mean it was bad? No, I mean, a lot of the great architecture came from them too. There was a lot of things that they contributed to the world that was good, that was a part of their culture, that was separate from the Jewish culture. Those things aren't necessarily bad. Them having a place of exercise. Now, I imagine as wicked as they were, those places probably had some junk in there that probably were wicked. But, exercising itself, it's not wrong. The Apostle Paul said in 1 Timothy 4:8, "For bodily exercise profiteth little." If it was a sin, then there would be no profit to it. There's no profit in sin. And so while bodily exercise, it's profitable, there are things that are better than that. And yes, you can become overly obsessed with these things. It can become too much a part of your life. And that does happen with sports, which causes a lot of people to just want to completely condemn it. But I don't think that's right. I don't even think that's biblical. 1 Corinthians 6:12 says, "All things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any." The Apostle Paul, he didn't want things stopping him, defeating him. He wanted to be, productive. And so, so when it comes to something like sports, I definitely think that is something that we could say is lawful for all of us. Now, is it expedient for all of us? Maybe not. Again, some people get so obsessed with sports that they might not be capable of, being involved in it in moderation and things like that, and they might just need to walk away with it. But other people, they keep it in its rightful place, and I don't think it's wrong for them to do that. When I was younger, I was really into baseball. I mean, I loved baseball. I watched it whenever I get a chance to. If I was driving anywhere and a game was going on, I was listening to it on the radio. I was always checking. I remember back when I used to get the newspaper so I could see the standings to find out, where the Cubs were, how many games behind they were, seeing if they still had a chance. I followed all that stuff. And then this wonderful thing, the internet came out, and I was able to go online at MLB.com, and I could check it at any time. I just thought that was the greatest thing. And I would, like, almost every day, I'd be checking, see who won, see who lost. And, and it was kind of a waste of time. I'd get in a bad mood when the Cubs would lose a game. And it's like there's 162 games in a year. 162. Regular season. not counting preseason, not counting playoffs. 162. And, I just got to the point where, I won't say I never just like gave it up, but what did happen was, I got married, I started having kids, I just didn't have time for it. And it just kind of faded away, and, and it would not have been good for me to be involved with it as I was, before I was married and had kids. But, again, as long as you can keep things in their place, I don't think it's wrong for you to enjoy those things. I quit watching baseball. And I said, when I say I quit, I never quit. I never determined I'm not watching baseball anymore. No, I wasn't doing it anymore. But then when the Cubs went to the World Series, I watched the World Series. And that was pretty cool. And I enjoyed that, and it kind of reignited, that old love that I had for the game. And I remember when the World Series was over, I remember, I remember I got home the one evening, I'm just like, what am I going to do this evening? Just after a little over a week of watching World Series in the evening, I'm wanting more. Even though they literally won the World Series, what I always wanted to see, I wanted more. And, thankfully, baseball season was over long enough that I got detoxed real quick, and I still haven't gotten back into baseball since then. So, I've been able to control it, but, I like going to games. I don't enjoy it as much as I used to because I don't even know who any of the players are anymore. I used to be able to tell you who all the players are, their stats, all that kind of stuff. I can't do any of that anymore, but I'm not mad at people that can do those things. But either way, as long as you are not brought under the power of those things, I think it's fine. And so in some more sports references that Paul makes in Philippians 3:14, he says, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. And then Hebrews 12, well, this is Paul and I don't know, but he says in verse 1, wherefore seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. So right there we see, a race. It's like we've got a crowd watching us. This is something we can all visually picture in our mind, even to this day. 2,000 years later, we still have this in our culture, and we can picture this. And there's something motivating, when you're running a race, when you get tired, knowing people are watching, knowing people are counting on you, knowing people are cheering you on. It means a lot. And a lot of sports throughout history has involved fighting, has been very physical. And in 2 Timothy 4:7, Paul said, I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day. And not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. So as Paul, when he's talking about fighting a good fight there, you say, well, that's, referencing to an actual fight, warfare, not a sport. Well, I think it could probably be both, because historically, a lot of the sports that we have had have been things that kind of resemble things that we have to do in real life, real battles. Historically, that's how it's been. One thing that, we guys really like to do, we did this a while back at our church, and it was a lot of fun, is we went paintballing. Why do guys want to go around and, shoot each other with paintballs so bad? Well, it's because obviously we don't want to shoot each other with bullets. We're friends. Also, we don't want to get shot with bullets, but there is just something in us as men that, descend from people who have been fighting wars with guns for a long time now, that, we like to think that, we could survive in the heat of a battle, that we could dominate, that we could shoot the other guy before they can shoot us. And so it kind of mimics these things. It simulates these things that we're likely to find ourselves in one of these days. Today, our life is so cushy. It's so easy. We have no challenges that, you have like your Gen Z things that are real popular now, because they're literally never, going to get in any kind of real danger. So what do they have? They have their escape rooms and things that they do where they can feel like that they're in a, life or death situation. It mimics all these things, even though it's not the real thing. And people love those things. Gen Z, they're too lazy to go out on a golf course where it's real challenging, so they go to things like Top Golf. We've got all these like super easy versions of stuff that, they, instead of going to a golf course where you walk around carrying clubs, chasing your ball, shooting for a little hole, you go to Top Golf where they bring you food, they bring you drinks, you got a couch to sit on in between shots, a machine makes a ball roll out to you, you hit it, you don't have to chase it. I mean, it's the wimpiest thing in the world. And our sports are getting pretty wimpy today, a lot of them, but not all of them. We still have, the violent sports. And so I want to read some of this stuff to you because this is interesting that just kind of shows how we are about sports. But so this is kind of about the Olympics. So the pentathlon, it became an Olympic sport in 708 BC. That's how far back it goes. And they had things like running, jumping, discus throw, things like that. But there was a lot of different types of games and things they had. They had boxing even back then. They had fighting. They had one sport called pancration, if I'm saying that right. It was something that the ancient Greeks had, and it was like a free-for-all hand-to-hand fight that mixed boxing, kicking, and wrestling. There were only 2 rules. Don't bite, and don't gouge out your opponent's eyes. Everything else was fair game. There were no time limits, and except in rare cases where a judge might intervene, the fights lasted until one person was coerced into giving up or died. And understand, some of these ancient cultures were very savage, were very wicked, and they had sports that literally involved watching people get killed. I'm not going to read all these things, but a lot of the different sports they had, it involved people dying, which is wrong. They had one sport, it was called a fisherman's joust, where 2 groups of guys, each hopping into their boats, rowing out into the Nile, they would proceed to beat each other with their oars in pointed gaffs. And this often took place before the pharaoh, and many times the bloody mess would entice crocodiles and hippos to enter the fray. And then later the Greeks and the Romans adopted similar types of fighting games. This sport has since been revived in France, though it's quite a bit tamer than the original, and presumably no crocodiles are ever involved. So, that'd be honest, just guys going out in boats and just beating each other with their oars. You say, that's kind of weird. Well, back then, maybe they had battles like that. People probably spent a little more time out on the water, and so they wanted to think they could conquer the enemy. It just seems kind of funny. But, here's what we have today. I've been seeing a lot of these videos out there where I think this is the dumbest sport in the world. And you know what? You can call me a wimp. That's fine. You can call me a wimp. But what's with this sport where you just stand there and let people slap you? I've seen some of these guys that are like massive. They will let some massive dude just slap them in the face. And it's just, what on earth? But, sometimes in life, you need to hit somebody. You need to slap somebody. And so there's people out there, they want to know, if I ever get in a slapping match, I'm gonna win. I'd prefer to do some kind of sport that has a little more strategy, where you can also use defense instead of, because in real life, I'm not just gonna stand there and let someone slap me. But people are into that. Let's see some more of these. There were some pretty funny ones. I don't want to read all these, but they had some of the sporting events they had. It involved just people, no weapons, fighting different kinds of beasts. And that would a lot of times end in people dying. They had, I don't even know how to say, Nguni stick fighting, and we still have something similar to that today, but they would basically beat each other up with the sticks, one for offense and one for defense. Although people seldom died, the participants would often walk away with numerous scars that they would wear like badges of honor. Weddings among those who practice this, even today, often involve warriors from both the bride and groom's families getting together and fighting one another to establish who the best fighters are in each group. And and I guess that kind of thing really matters in some cultures. There was another one I wanted to read about that was pretty funny. Here's one. Oh yeah, this reminded me of the slapping one that people are doing. I think I'd rather do the slapping one than this one. It was shin kicking. consisting of two people holding their opponent's neck and attempting to kick each other's shins. This simple sport has been practiced in England for hundreds of years. Although it's not as ancient as several others listed here, nor lethal, considering the fact that the early version of the sport featured steel-toed boots and training for a match involved hitting your shins with various size hammers, we definitely consider this to be hardcore enough to keep on this list. And if you were wondering how you win at this sport, the object is simply to get your opponent to fall to the ground. Today there's even a world shin kicking championship. So, one that they had was camel jumping. See how many camels you could jump over. You know, we don't really have a need for that in America, where you don't see camels roaming around. Here's one. I don't know if this is one I was wanting to read. Oh, no, that's not it. Oh, here we go. Buzkashi, the national sport of Afghanistan. This game involves a number of mounted players fighting violently over the carcass of a headless goat, which players try to pitch across a goal line. So there's crazy stuff. The Vikings, they had a skin pulling. It was an extreme tug of war where the Vikings preferred using animal skin over rope, playing over a huge fire pit. Usually the winners would walk away with the spoils of the town, which included some pretty horrible things that they could do to people. And as you guessed, the losers either showed their cowardice by letting go or became intimately acquainted with a roaring fire pit. So, since the beginning, for thousands of years, man has all. I think I'm losing. I think my internet's going in and out. Hopefully, y'all are still there. But my internet started doing weird stuff. But basically, what I was saying is, throughout our history, for the last thousands of years, man has always tried to come up with some way to dominate other people. That's just kind of how we are. It's who we are. And some of these things are good, clean fun. Some of these things are pretty barbaric. And some people are drawn to the most violent, the most extreme sports, where some are like, you know what, I like sports, but I'm going to do ones where there's a pretty good chance of me walking away without being permanently injured. And so, I'll admit I'm one of those people that, as much as I like sports, as much as I like winning, I don't like sports enough to do like life and death and savage in a bad way, in a very bad way. And there's my internet going out again. But hopefully you all are getting this. But some good things about sports. Some good things I want to say about sports. Things to think about, reasons it's good to be involved with them, to get your boys involved with them, is, for one, sports is just fun. It is not wrong for you to have fun. It is not wrong for you to go out and to do some things that you enjoy. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's good. It's healthy to do that kind of thing. You can do it with your family. You can do it with your friends. These are great ways to spend time with each other, playing basketball, playing football, baseball. There are literally sports for like every number of people, pretty much. You can do that kind of thing, and it's good to have fun. It's fun to watch. Okay, and so when I'm talking about sports too, I'm not just talking about playing it. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch competition. It's fun to watch people strive for the mastery. It's enjoyable to see that kind of thing. Competition, it's good. It helps teach character and life lessons as well. And again, we need to do things to help, develop character of people today. It's a fun way. Yeah, like I said, it's a fun way to have good quality time with your family, friends, not just playing, but even watching, getting together, watching a sporting event. It's good, clean fun. But some bad things about sports. First off, they can be a waste of time. You can spend countless hours watching sports. While I don't think it's wrong to do it to a certain extent, obviously, you don't want to be watching sports all day. And some people do. People often prioritize them over things they shouldn't. If you're skipping church for a sporting event, then your priorities are wrong. If you are, skipping church to watch sports, if your church is canceling church for a sporting event, there's a problem with that. They can be a major waste of money, especially too if you don't have the money. If you have the money to spend on these things, great, go right ahead and do it. But also sports, they can have a lot of bad things associated with them. One of the big problems we have today is a lot of junk is being promoted during sporting events. And so, that's annoying. I do not want to hear about, Black Lives Matter. I don't want to see rainbow flags or when I'm watching a sporting event. I want to watch a football game. I don't want to hear about political stuff. I don't want to know the political motivations of the people playing those games. I don't want to know who they voted for. I don't even really want to know about their personal life. But often these are the things that everybody talks about and they get focused on. And, some guy comes out of the closet and all of a sudden now he's like the focal point, and it's just like, first off, man, that's the last thing I want to know if I'm watching a sporting event. It's just absolutely ridiculous, but these are like the focal points of a lot of sports today. And I find it absolutely revolting. And so that's one of the biggest things that keeps me away from it is I can't handle all the political junk. I just can't handle it. And I want to watch sports. I don't want to watch politics. And so another problem is, again, sports can bring out the worst in people. It doesn't make the sport bad. But again, it reveals your character. And a lot of times people are not impressed with what they see in people when they play sports. Okay? A lot of parents, they aren't impressed with what they see in their children when they play sports. That does not mean there's something wrong with the sport. It means there's something wrong with your child, and you should probably work on that. You should probably deal with that because sports do reveal one's character, but they can also be used to help develop one's character. So use sports for that. If you got a lazy kid, get them involved in sports to help keep them from not being lazy. If you just have a kid that's just not motivated by anything, try to find a sport that he likes, to get him motivated, to get active, to become athletic. It's not okay being a doughboy. And that's another reason I think you should get your kids in sports, especially your boys. You don't want to raise doughboys. You don't want to raise lazy gamers. You don't want to raise soft people, boys. You want them to be competitive because they're going to have to compete for jobs one of these days. Life can be a battle. It can be a competition. They need to know how to handle all these things. You need to toughen them up. They need to learn the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And that's why you don't need to get them involved in these politically correct sports where everybody gets a trophy. That is what created Gen Z. We have Gen Z today who feels entitled to everything because you gave them trophies for doing nothing. You gave them trophies for losing. You gave them trophies for playing in their basketball game and going and eating grass during the game. You don't get a trophy for that. You lose. And but get them involved in real sports. You need to do it to promote strength, to promote manliness. I wouldn't necessarily support my boys if they decide I want to be a figure skater or a ballerina, even though that's very athletic. Those things don't really attract the masculine type that I'm trying to raise, or that I've tried to raise. And don't push them towards stuff like that. Let them do something that involves them being tough. Cheerleaders is an athletic thing too, but I would never have pushed my boys to be a cheerleader. I don't want them cheering on the athletes. I would want them to be the athletes. And so, use sports that develop manliness. In our effeminate culture today, we've got sports, we've got activities and things for all types. And, there's some things, my boys aren't going to get into that. That's not cool. And so, another reason to get involved in sports or to, even watching sports, it is okay for you to have something that you enjoy watching with your family, talking about with your family. These are common interests that you can have. And, being a Christian does not just mean, and being a good Christian does not just mean we're sitting around reading our Bibles 24/7. It's okay for you to find things that you enjoy doing and to just go do those things and to have fun. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think it's a very good thing to do. And sports, it's a good way to just get you active, to get you healthy, and watching sports motivates you to want to do those things too. That's another way you can kind of use that tool. If I want my boys being interested in something manly, it helps having something they can watch that is manly. That's how you can help get them interested in those things. And that's why there's so much stuff on television today promoting homo stuff, promoting boys being soft and effeminate. They're shoving that stuff down their throats, so to get them being that way. Well, you know what? I shield my kids from that stuff, but I am going to push them towards, the manly things. And a lot of these sports they are just that. They are manly. And, and just because there can be some bad associated with them, just because they can they do bring out the worst in some people, doesn't mean we're not capable of using them for our benefit, our advantage, using them for good. And I think it's a great thing to do. And so we're going to go ahead and shut this down. And I appreciate you watching. Sorry for the technical difficulties that we had, but we will see you all next week.